Hello, this is Lori Killow. Welcome to my presentation on the use of checklists in early childhood programs. The sample checklist you see is a partial checklist. This partial checklist is looking at milestones of development. By the way, observing and documenting child development against the developmental milestones is probably the most common use of checklists. Notice that the checklists follow a predetermined list of criteria, whereby the observer records a simple yes and no response. Checklists are considered a closed method because no raw data or evidence is recorded. The only information recorded is the judgment of the recorder about the criteria. No details are collected to back up the recorder's decisions. For a checklist to be an effective tool, the observer must be very familiar with the criteria. Their criteria should be clearly observable with little room for judgment so that if multiple raters are observing, they achieve the same results. Checklists should be arranged in the order in which normal development occurs. By designing the checklist that way, a checklist can predict what skills will appear next and can be used to guide teachers in planning activities to encourage that development. By designing the criteria in that order, the same checklist can be used at repeated intervals and will show growth over time, as in this example. In the 3 months the child was observed, he grew from creeping across the floor to pulling up and cruising around the furniture. The most common use of checklists is to measure a child's development against a predetermined set of milestones. In Virginia, those are the milestones of development. This publication by the Virginia Department of Social Services is comprehensive. It is most often used to look at the children's physical development, their language development, and cognitive development, and their social and emotional development. But it can also be used to look more deeply into a child's approaches to learning. As you might imagine, trying to observe and record the development of several children at once can quickly turn into chaos. It is better to select one child to observe over a period of time, perhaps in one day, in all developmental domains. Or select one developmental domain and observe the children one at a time in that one domain. Checklists can be used for almost an endless array of purposes. For instance, they can be used to record the presence or absence of a specific skill, such as perhaps toileting, or they can be used to show the sequence of developmental progress. They can be used to screen for developmental lags, and they're used as a curriculum planning tool for individualized intentional teaching. Safety checklists can be used to determine if the safety of indoor or outdoor play equipment is adequate. Documenting those safety checks that they are being done regularly could be important in case of an accident or even a possible lawsuit. It is worth noting that many checklists are published and copyrighted. You must either purchase the rating sheets or receive permission to copy them or make your own. To recap, the advantages of using checklists is that they are very time and labor efficient. When well designed, checklists are comprehensive, giving a wide array of data. Checklists can be repeatedly done over time to document development and growth, and it's a critical step in developing developmentally appropriate instructional planning. But there are disadvantages. No details of the observation event are included. For instance, you could be observing a child's social development and note that the child hits or cries. But if those behaviors are out of the norm because he is sick that day, that detail would be lost in a checklist. Did you notice, ironically, the time factor was listed as both an advantage and a disadvantage to checklists? Overall, checklists are time and labor efficient. But if you have many items to check or many children to check or both, it can be time consuming. As early childhood professionals, you are busy all of the time. You have a lot to do all day and often all at once and with little help. In the use of checklists, technology is your friend. A checklist can easily be loaded onto a tablet. In the classroom, all you have to do is open the document, check off what the child has attained, and save that document with the child's name. It can later be downloaded into the child's file or portfolio. What is the point of doing a checklist and completing that observation, or any observation, if it doesn't get used or stored? Observations must be documented. If parents want to know their child's progress, you can't say, Jose is doing great. His fine motor skills have improved and he's almost ready for kindergarten. You also can't say, hey, Chris needs to work on his social skills. He's still not being nice to his classmates on the playground. If you don't have the documentation to back it up, you just can't say it. You need to be able to show documentation indicating antisocial behaviors for Chris and their frequency. Maybe Chris is still pushing to get ahead of the other children on the line of the playground, but it's happening less and less. That would be a good thing, but without documentation, you don't know that, and the parents can't see that. A wise person once said, if you don't document it, it didn't happen. Probably the most important piece is lesson planning assessment. As a teacher, you need to know what the students already know so you can plan developmentally appropriate lessons and activities that will strike the balance between challenge and frustrating. And since young children develop at such different rates, it's important to know that for each child individually. You can then group students according to their ability, but you need to know where they are developmentally first. Everyone looks at the world through their own unique frame of reference. A frame is the boundary or outer limits around a picture. Each person's understanding is limited by those boundaries put there by their own past experiences, their own personal cultural beliefs, and their education and training. This can result in how you see the picture of the child in the frame you are observing. If your own personal biases affect how you see the child you are observing, we could call it smudges on that picture. It could be racial or ethnic stereotypic beliefs. It could be gender. Some people just like girls more than they like boys, or boys more than girls. They may not even realize the subtle ways in which those favoritisms come out. You need to be able to recognize that in yourself. Stop the video and ponder this scenario. I look forward to reading your thoughts in our class discussion. For this module, you must participate in a robust discussion as your participation grade. Please be sure to refer to the practicum guidelines and rubric that is a part of the course syllabus. I'm looking for you to show you are a learned professional by citing sources. Since there were few postings for you to read and a few articles to read and view, it is recommended that you do some additional outside research on your own, and be sure to cite your sources.